There is one moment I have replayed more times than I can count. Not the moment I found out the truth. Not the moment he packed his bags. Not even the moment I signed the divorce papers with a hand that had finally stopped shaking. The moment that rearranged everything I thought I understood about the 2 years before it happened in a hospital room on a Thursday morning, 40 minutes after I pushed my daughter into the world. I want you to sit with that for a second, because I need you to understand exactly how raw I was. I was exhausted in a way that had no name. Past tired. Past drained. My body was trembling from 14 hours of labor, my arms were shaking as I held her, and my daughter was blinking up at a world she had just arrived in, 7 pounds 2 ounces of dark hair and impossibly slow, curious eyes. I was completely undone, in the good way, the way you are undone when you finally understand something enormous and irreversible about the entire shape of your life. And that is exactly when my mother-in-law walked through that door. She looked at my daughter. She looked at me. And she smiled the same smile I had seen 100 times before, the one I had always called warmth, the one I had framed in photographs and hung proudly on my living room wall. But in that specific light, in that specific fragile moment, I finally saw it for exactly what it was. And everything rearranged itself in about 4 seconds. My name is Kiksa, and I need you to stay with me, because this story does not end where you think it ends. Let me take you back to where it actually began, because you need to understand how completely I believed in this family before I tell you how they showed me who they really were. I met Bastian when I was 26, at a mutual friend's backyard gathering, nothing cinematic, just too many people and too much noise and a man across a picnic table who kept making me laugh without even trying. He was warm in a way that felt effortless. He listened like your words actually mattered to him instead of waiting for his turn to speak. We dated for 19 months. He proposed on a camping trip with no ring yet ready, just a fire, a question, and my answer arriving before he had even finished asking it. I want to be honest about Bastian here, because it matters enormously to what happens later. He was a good man in all the easy ways. Faithful. Consistent. Present when he was home. He remembered your coffee order, the name of your coworker's dog, something you mentioned in passing 3 weeks earlier. He made you feel seen in all the small, ordinary moments that most people forget to notice. What he was not, what I did not understand until it was far too late to matter, was strong enough to stand between me and his family when it actually counted. That single missing quality would eventually dismantle everything we had built. Are you starting to see it yet? Because I didn't. Not for a long, long time. His mother, Odette, was the very first person he ever introduced me to. Not his friends. Not his father. His mother. I noticed that detail somewhere in the back of my mind, and then, the way you do when someone is making you feel wonderful, I simply set it aside. Odette was elegant in the way of someone who had worked very hard to make elegance look effortless, a beautiful home, perfect posture, a composed presence that somehow made you feel slightly underdressed even when you weren't. The first time we met, she hugged me and told me I was exactly what she had always pictured for her son. I remember thinking that was the nicest compliment I had ever received from anyone's mother. His father, Crispin, was quieter, agreeable, the kind of man who laughs at the right moments and defers on everything else. I liked him immediately. It would take me years to understand that his agreeableness wasn't a personality trait at all. It was 30 years of practice, a strategy worn smooth by decades of navigating Odette. His sisters, Quinnell and Vina, were their mother's daughters in every visible way, the same composure, the same careful warmth, the same gift for saying something that landed like a compliment in the moment and revealed itself as something else entirely on the drive home. Quinnell took me shopping the month before the wedding. Vina texted me constantly, little inside jokes, the specific closeness of women who have decided to let you in. I genuinely believed I had won some rare, wonderful lottery. My own mother, Odessa, came to the first big family dinner and was perfectly gracious the entire evening. But on the drive home, she said one thing, very carefully. They're very pulled together, aren't they? It wasn't a question. There was something quiet underneath it that I chose not to look at. I should have looked. I think about that car ride more than almost anything else now. We married on a Saturday in October, and when I walked toward him, he looked at me like I was the answer to something he had been working out for years. Whatever came after, I still keep that moment. It was true. 8 months into our marriage, I found out I was pregnant, and Bastian's reaction was immediate and completely unguarded. He stood in our bathroom holding the test, and he cried, and then he laughed at himself for crying, and then he just held me without saying a single word for a long, long time. That was real. I need you to remember that it was real, because the real things and everything else got so tangled together over the next year that I had to work incredibly hard, later, to pull them apart again. We told his family at Sunday dinner. Odette stood up, walked around the table, and put both hands on my face, a gesture so deliberate it felt almost ceremonial. "A baby," she said, and her voice caught on the word, and I thought, this woman loves me. I believed it without a shred of doubt. What followed was 6 weeks of celebration that I understand very differently now than I did in that moment. Odette organized a baby shower, not a small one, a rented venue, 40 guests, catered food, a custom cake with our last name written across it in gold lettering. She called me 3 times a week during the planning. Quinel made a slideshow of Bastian's baby photos. Vina gave a speech about new life and family that had women I barely knew reaching for napkins to catch their tears. I sat at the center of all of it feeling, with complete sincerity, chosen. Welcomed. Loved by. This family I had married into. I sent Odette a handwritten thank you card afterward. I meant every single word of it. I still wonder sometimes if she kept it. What I did not know, what no one had told me, was that the entire celebration had a condition sitting quietly at its center. That the warmth surrounding me was not unconditional at all. That I had been welcomed into something with a very specific expectation attached, and that my place in it depended entirely on whether I could meet that expectation. I found out by accident, the way you find out the things people never intended for you to know. I was 4 months pregnant. Odette and Crispin were over for dinner, and Quinel had stopped by. I came downstairs after changing and paused at the bottom step, because I could hear voices in the kitchen, and something in the tone of that conversation made me stop moving entirely. Not the words at first. The register. That particular low, private frequency of people who are certain they are completely alone. Odette's voice. Has he said anything? Quinel. They don't know yet. Next month. Then Odette, and there was something in her voice I had never once heard before, something tight and final. It needs to be a boy. You understand that. This family needs a son first. A pause. Then Vina, quieter. And if it's not? 4 full seconds of silence. I counted every one of them, standing on that bottom step, not breathing, not moving, for seconds that somehow contained a complete and devastating answer. Then Odette said simply, then he'll need to make a different choice. I went back upstairs. I sat on the edge of the bed, put both hands on my stomach, and told myself, with everything I had, that I had misheard. That I had misread the entire conversation. I told myself that for 11 straight weeks, right up until the anatomy scan. Here is where everything changes, so stay with me, because this is the moment the entire rest of my life pivots on. The technician pointed at the measurements, the heartbeat, the small profile glowing on the screen, and said it the way you say something beautifully ordinary. It's a girl. Bastian's hand tightened around mine. I looked at the screen. A daughter. Something shifted in my chest, the best kind of shift, permanent and completely irreversible. In the car on the way home, Bastian went quiet. Not the tender quiet from the bathroom with the pregnancy test. A different quiet. Compressed. The quiet of someone holding something in with both hands. What are you thinking? I asked him. Nothing. Just taking it in. That night, he called Odette. I wasn't trying to listen, but our house isn't large, and his voice dropped after a few minutes, went careful, and I heard him say, over and over, in different arrangements, I know, Mom. I know. I understand. I know. I lay in bed that night thinking about the staircase. About 4 seconds of silence. About then he'll need to make a different choice. And I understood, with a cold clarity I had not wanted to arrive at, exactly what phase we had now entered. The shift happened in increments, which made it almost impossible to name in the moment. Odette's calls dropped from 3 times a week to once, then to every 10 days. The warmth didn't vanish. It thinned. Diluted. The way color slowly drains from something left too long in bright light. Quinnell stopped texting entirely. Vina, who had given that speech about welcome and belonging, became suddenly, consistently unavailable. And Bastian started coming home later. Not dramatically. 30 minutes, then 45, then an hour, stretched slowly across weeks, gradual enough that I nearly missed the pattern completely. When he was home, he was physically present but somewhere else, the way a person can occupy a room while their entire attention lives somewhere far away. One evening, with Briss still 4 weeks from arriving, I asked him directly. "Has your family said something about the baby being a girl?" He paused half a second too long. "My mom has some traditional views," he said. "She grew up differently." "What did she say to you, Bastian?" He looked at the counter, then at me, then back at the counter. "She said she hoped we try again soon for a son." I went very still. "Our daughter isn't even here yet," I said. "She's 4 weeks away, and your mother is already talking about replacing her." He started to answer. I didn't let him finish. "How does she mean it, Bastian? Tell me exactly how she means it." He couldn't. And in that silence, something closed inside me, quietly, without drama, just a final, quiet click. I called my own mother that night. Odessa listened without a single interruption. When I finished, she said, "Come stay with me." "I'm fine," I told her. That steadiness in her voice told me she wasn't going to move an inch. "Come stay with me, Kiksa." I didn't go. I was 36 weeks pregnant, and I still needed to believe, I had to believe, that whatever was real between Bastian and me was strong enough to hold against his family's conditions. I was wrong. But there are things you have to be wrong about until the very last possible moment. Now we arrive at that hospital room again, the one I opened this story with, so let me finish showing you what actually happened there. Briss arrived on a Thursday morning after 14 hours of labor, and when they placed her in my arms, she made a sound like she already had opinions about the entire situation, and I laughed, involuntarily, the kind of laugh that surprises you completely. And then I cried. And then I simply looked at her for a very long time. Everything I had felt before that exact moment was a rough draft. I know how that sounds. I am telling you it is also simply, completely true. Bastian held her and said her name quietly, and I watched him and thought, he loves her. That was real. I still hold on to that. His family arrived 2 hours later. Odette came in first. I watched her cross the room and look at my daughter, a long, careful look, and I watched the smile appear. Wide. Warm. Calibrated. Held precisely half a second too long. She held Briss for 4 minutes. I counted, still connected to monitors, watching my mother-in-law hold my newborn daughter like she was completing a formality. Then she handed her back, kissed my forehead, told me she was beautiful, and gathered the others with a single look. 11 minutes total, and then they were gone. Crispin said almost nothing. Quinnell said congratulations without meeting my eyes. Vina said she was precious, also without looking at me once. Bastian watched them leave and said absolutely nothing at all. My own mother arrived an hour later. She held Briss for 45 minutes, cried 3 separate times, and when she finally handed her back, she looked at me with something I couldn't fully read. Love and sorrow, and a warning she couldn't quite bring herself to say out loud. She was memorizing us. She already knew what was coming. 3 weeks later, on a Sunday evening, while Briss slept, Bastian sat across from me at the kitchen table and said the words I had been quietly waiting for since that staircase. My family thinks we need to have a serious conversation about our future. 3 weeks postpartum. No more than 3 consecutive hours of sleep in 21 days. And my husband sat across from me, reading from a script someone else had written for him. Say it plainly, I told him. Don't dress it up. They feel our values may not be aligned long term. The question of, they want you to leave me because I had a girl. The silence that followed was the loudest thing I have ever heard in my life. Look at me, I said. Not the table. Me. Do you want to leave? Not your mother. Not Quinnell or Vina. You. He didn't answer immediately. That gap, that terrible, clarifying gap, told me absolutely everything I needed to know. I need time to think, he finally said. Something in me went very still and very clear. Then go think, I told him. I walked to Briss's room, lifted her from her bassinet, sat in the chair by the window, and held her against my chest while I made myself a single quiet promise. I will not beg. Not him. Not her. Not one single person in that family. Not once. He moved out 5 weeks later, packing methodically over a single weekend while I sat in the living room with Briss and did not help him and did not stop him. He went straight to his parents' house. That one fact confirmed everything about where his decision had actually been made all along. He apologized repeatedly. He said he needed space, needed time, didn't know what he wanted. I waited until his car disappeared around the corner. Then I sat on the kitchen floor and cried the way you have to cry sometimes, completely without controlling it. When I was empty, I fed my daughter, and I texted my mother 3 words. He's gone. Come. Odessa was at my door in 35 minutes, groceries in hand, a casserole, the no-nonsense energy of a woman who had already decided that falling apart was simply not on the agenda. Here is what we're going to do, she said, sitting across from me at that same table. We're going to eat. Then we're going to make a plan. Then we're going to start, and we are not going to stop. I ate. We made the plan. I started, and I did not stop, and this is where the story actually turns, so don't go anywhere. The first month felt more like enduring than living. Up at 5:30 with Briss, standing in the kitchen with coffee, looking at furniture we had chosen together, a hallway rug that had taken 3 Saturdays to agree on. Every morning I did a quiet accounting of what was mine now versus what was simply history. The rug stayed. It was a good rug. That was the only reason. Nobody ever tells you that ending a marriage means losing the version of yourself that existed inside it, the one with a Sunday routine and a shared grocery list and someone to check in with at night. Those things feel small when you have them. They feel enormous when they're gone. You have to decide, deliberately, what you build in their place, because if you don't decide, the emptiness decides for you. So I decided. Odessa came 3 days a week without ever being asked, made Briss laugh in ways that stopped me in doorways just to watch. Watching them together, I thought about what kind of grandmother Odette could have been, what she gave up the second she decided a granddaughter was a condition rather than a gift. That was her loss. I stopped carrying it for her. 10 days after Bastian left, I walked into a family attorney's office while Odessa watched Briss, and I told the entire story without a single tear, not because I wasn't feeling it, but because the tears had already happened on that kitchen floor, and this was now simply work. My attorney's name was Petra, precise, methodical, completely unbothered by anything Bastian's legal team attempted. They tried to reduce the child support calculation. They tried to reframe my reduced income during pregnancy as a personal choice instead of a documented impact. Petra handled every single position like it was minor, efficiently, without drama, and without giving an inch. The divorce finalized 7 months after he moved out. Primary physical custody to me. Child support correctly calculated. The house, with the green nursery I had spent 3 weeks choosing the exact right shade for, stayed mine. I sat in that parking lot after the final hearing and called Odessa. Done, I said. Good, she said. Come home and eat something. And here is the part nobody in that family ever saw coming, because while Odette was busy making her next set of plans, I had gone completely quiet. And quiet, I have learned, is exactly where the real work gets done. It is where you stop performing your recovery and actually start living it. I rebuilt my freelance graphic design practice from the ground up, slowly at first, then steadily, then faster than I ever expected, as Odessa's 3 days a week gave me back enough focused hours to chase work that actually mattered. I raised my rates. I turned down small projects that would have paid small money and swallowed enormous time, and I said yes to work that challenged me, the kind that makes you slightly uncomfortable, which I have learned is almost always the right sign. 13 months after Bastian left, I signed a contract with a regional firm for a complete rebranding campaign, for months of work, multiple deliverables, and a number I read 3 full times before I believed it. More than I had earned in any single year of our marriage. I called Petra just to confirm I was reading the terms correctly. Then I signed. I want you to understand what that felt like. Not the number itself, though the number was real, and it absolutely mattered. What I mean is the specific weight of earning something nobody handed you, that no one can claim any part of, something that exists entirely because you built it out of the wreckage of a situation designed to make you feel smaller. I have never found a word that fully covers that feeling. I'm not sure one exists. Odette called once, 4 months after the divorce finalized. I watched her name appear on my screen, and I let it ring until it stopped. The voicemail said she hoped there were no hard feelings, that family situations were complicated, that she hoped little Briss was doing well. Little Briss, as if she had any warm relationship at all with the child she had held for 4 minutes in a hospital room before quietly engineering her removal from her own father's daily life. I never called back. There was nothing I could say that she was capable of receiving, and I had stopped directing energy toward people who couldn't use it. Quinnell messaged on Briss's first birthday, for words, "Happy birthday little one." I read it, set my phone down, and went back to finishing a lemon birthday cake, lemon because I had recently learned that Briss goes completely still whenever she tastes something sour, like she is writing a very detailed internal review. Vina never reached out at all. I have come to respect that more than I expected to. At least it was honest. Then, 8 months after the divorce was final, 15 months after he moved out, Bastian called me. An actual call, not a text. I answered because his name means something about Briss, and anything about Briss always gets answered. But it wasn't about Briss at all. He was quiet for a long moment after I picked up. Then, I made the wrong choice, he said. I need you to know that I understand what I did. What I allowed to happen. I let my family make a decision that was mine to make. I chose wrong, and I'm sorry. I could hear in his voice that this wasn't a performance. He had been sitting with it for a while. I know you did, I told him. And I believe that you're sorry. A pause. How is she? She's wonderful, I said. She's going to be completely fine. I know, he said quietly. I can see that when I'm with her. We stayed on the line another moment without speaking. I don't expect anything from this call, he finally said. I just needed you to know. I hear you, I said. We hung up. I sat with that conversation for a while, the weight of a man who had finally arrived at an understanding that came far too late to change anything. There was something almost sad about it, not the grief kind of sad, the kind that comes from watching someone finally see clearly what they gave up, and knowing that seeing it doesn't restore what was already lost. I put that call in the place where I keep things that are true but don't change the present, and I went back to my evening. Briss is 20 months old now. She walks like she's been walking for years, with a confidence that borders on aggressive. She has strong, specific, fully formed opinions about her cup, her books, her seat at the table, exactly which parent she wants beside her at any given moment, and she communicates every bit of it with complete clarity despite a vocabulary that is still mostly arriving. She laughs with her whole body. She gives hugs by running full speed across a room, trusting completely that you will catch her. I always catch her. I always will. She has my eyes, and Bastian's chin, and her own everything else, some combination that arrived fully formed and keeps unfolding in new ways every single week, like something that turns out to have more inside it than you expected, every single time you look. Last Tuesday evening, I was on the floor with her, stacking soft blocks and watching her knock them all over with an expression of complete satisfaction, and I thought about a hospital room, about a smile held half a second too long, about 4 seconds of silence on a staircase, About a man across a kitchen table who said he needed time to think. And I thought, look what that silence built. Not despite them. Because of them. Because being measured by people who were supposed to love you without conditions, and coming up short against their requirements, shows you something about yourself that comfort and ease never could. It shows you exactly what you are made of. It shows you exactly what you become when you have no choice left but to find out. I found out. I am not telling you this story for sympathy. I have a contract on my kitchen table, and a mortgage I am current on, and a daughter who runs at me from across rooms, and a mother who arrives with casseroles and complete certainty, and I am doing more than fine. I am telling you this because somewhere out there right now is a woman being evaluated, being held against a standard she never agreed to, by people who wrapped that evaluation in warmth and baby showers and speeches about family, and who showed their true position the moment the result didn't match what they needed. I want her to hear this as clearly as I can say it. The measurement was never accurate. The people holding the ruler were never qualified to hold it. And the life you build after they finally put it down, that life is the complete answer to every single thing they thought they knew about you. My daughter is not a consolation prize. She is not a disappointment. She is not a reason to try again for something else. She is the whole point. She has always been the whole point. And the people who couldn't see that no longer have a view.